The planet Thalasvi had once been warm and peaceful. Its skies were soft purple, and the air carried a sweet scent from its flowering trees. But now it was wrapped in silence and ice. A terrible storm had come, not of wind or rain, but of cold so deep it could kill in minutes. Snow covered the ground in thick layers, and the sun hadn't shone for days. In the middle of this white world, a small figure moved slowly. She was a Virelin, a thin alien being with long arms and soft silver skin. Her name was Sira. Her legs shook with each step, and she held something close to her chest. A tiny newborn wrapped in the last warm cloth she owned. Sira had given birth just 3 days before the storm hit. There had been no warning, no time to escape. Her village was gone now, crushed by falling ice and buried under snow. She had tried to keep her baby warm, but her body had grown too weak. Her milk had dried in the cold, and her arms were tired from holding on. Her eyes looked up at the gray sky. She whispered a prayer in her language, not to be saved, but for her child to live. Not far above, orbiting the planet, a small ship floated in the cold black of space. Inside, Captain Mira Dalton, a human woman in her late 30s, stared at a screen. She had short dark hair and sharp eyes, but there was warmth in her voice. Her team had been sent to study the effects of sudden weather changes on outer colonies, but something else had caught her attention. "Captain," her pilot said, "I'm picking up a weak signal, organic life, near the western cliffs." Mira leaned forward. "One life form?" "Yes, ma'am, barely alive." The crew looked uneasy. The storm below was dangerous. No ship could land safely. But Mira didn't wait for debate. "I'm going down." "Captain, it's not safe," her engineer warned. "You could get stuck." "Then I'll be stuck," Mira replied, already putting on her suit. Minutes later, her small escape pod dropped from the ship, slicing through the thick clouds. She held tight as the wind pushed and pulled. Her heart pounded, but her mind was calm. Someone was down there. Someone was holding on. The pod hit the ground with a hard thump. Snow sprayed in all directions. Mira climbed out quickly, scanning the area. The cold bit at her face, even through her helmet. Her tracker beeped softly. The signal was near. She moved carefully, following the device until she saw a shape in the snow. A soft curve, barely moving. She rushed forward and dropped to her knees. It was a Virelin female, almost frozen. Her eyes were open, but they were slow to focus. In her arms, a small bundle twitched. A child. Mira didn't ask questions. She gently took the baby, wrapping it in her heated jacket. The infant made a soft sound, a high-pitched cry. Mira smiled. "You're still here," she whispered. The Virelin mother looked at Mira, her lips moving. "Please," she said in a weak voice. "My baby." "I can't." Mira nodded. "I've got her." She looked around. The storm was getting worse. She couldn't return to the pod. It was already half buried. She spotted a cave nearby, barely visible behind a sheet of ice. Carrying the baby, she helped the Virelin up and guided her step by step toward shelter. Inside, the cave was cold but dry. Mira set up her emergency heater and unwrapped her supplies. She made a bed out of thermal blankets and placed the baby in the middle. The child reached out, tiny fingers curling around Mira's glove. It was a small thing, but it felt like a promise. The Virelin mother leaned back, her breathing shallow. "No food," she said. "No milk. I have nothing left." Mira looked at her gently. "You gave her life. I'll give her the rest." Outside, the storm howled like a beast, but inside that cave, a small fire glowed. A human knelt beside a fragile alien child, warming her with her own heat, whispering earth songs to calm her cries. Mira didn't know what would happen tomorrow, but tonight she would not let the child die. Not here. Not like this. The cave was cold, but it was better than the open snow. Captain Mira Dalton sat carefully, holding the tiny Virelin child close to her chest. The baby's skin was almost see-through, soft and cool. but a small flicker of life still pulsed inside. Mira wrapped her jacket tighter around the child and tried to keep her own body warm too. The storm outside shook the cave entrance. The wind howled, pushing the ice walls, making strange noises that echoed in the dark. Mira could feel the weight of the night pressing down, but she did not let it show. Her eyes were sharp, always watching the baby's small face. The Varellan mother, Sira, lay against the cave wall. She was weak, and her breathing was slow. Her body had been through so much. The cold, the loss of her home, and the exhaustion of giving birth. She looked at Mira with tired eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. "You do not know what you have done." Mira shook her head softly. "I don't know much about your people," she said, "but I know this child deserves to live." Sira tried to smile, but the pain in her eyes was clear. "My milk. My body cannot feed her now. The cold stole it all." Mira looked at the child. She was too young to eat normal food. Human baby formula would not work for a Varellan. The differences between their species were huge, but giving up was not an option. Mira dug into her supplies. She found a small bottle and some powdered nutrients meant for human patients. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than nothing. She carefully mixed the powder with melted ice water she had purified. Holding the baby gently, she tried to feed her. The infant cried, a small, weak sound, then stopped, eyes blinking open. Mira held her close, speaking softly. "You're safe now. I won't let you go." Hours passed. The storm raged on. The baby's breathing grew stronger, but it was clear she was still too weak. Mira stayed awake, watching every tiny movement. Her communicator crackled. "Captain Dalton, this is Lieutenant Arlen on the ship. The storm is too bad to send a rescue team. You need to come back." Mira's face hardened. "I'm not leaving the child behind," she said. "No one else can hold her now." "Captain, your life is at risk. Her life is at risk too. I'm staying." The communicator went silent. Mira sighed and looked down at the fragile bundle in her arms. This was not a mission anymore. It was something more. A promise to protect life no matter the cost. As the night grew colder, Mira used her own body heat to warm the child. She wrapped the baby in soft cloth and tucked her inside her jacket, close to her heart. The baby's tiny fingers curled around Mira's shirt. For the first time since the storm began, Mira felt a flicker of hope. Sira's breathing grew more shallow. She reached out with a trembling hand and touched Mira's arm. "Thank you," she said again. "For her, for everything." Mira nodded. "We'll get through this." But deep down, she knew the road ahead would be hard. The next morning, the storm had lessened. Light filtered weakly through the ice at the cave entrance. Mira packed what supplies she could carry. The baby, whom she had quietly named Solon, was sleeping peacefully. Sira was too weak to move. She looked at Mira with sadness and whispered, "I cannot go with you." Mira knelt beside her. "Then I will carry both of you." Sira reached out, her hand brushing Mira's cheek. "You are more human than many I have met," she said softly. "Your heart is strong." Mira smiled, tears in her eyes. "I will keep her safe." With a deep breath, Mira lifted the sleeping Solon carefully and wrapped Sira in her warmest blanket. She pulled on her heavy boots and stepped out into the cold world. The landscape was white and endless. Snow stretched like a frozen ocean in every direction. The wind still whispered and moaned, but it was quieter than the night before. Mira scanned the horizon. Somewhere far away, the research outpost still sent a weak signal. That was her destination, a place where Solon could get help. Step by step, she began to move forward, her breath steaming in the cold air. Each step was heavy, but she kept going. She thought of Earth, a blue and green planet full of life and warmth. She thought of the humans she had grown up with, people who never gave up even when things seemed impossible. Solon stirred in her jacket, making small noises. Mira smiled. "You're going to live," she whispered. "I promise." The wind picked up again, biting and cold, but Mira did not stop. She knew the storm was only the beginning. The journey to safety would test every part of her, but a human would hold a fragile life in the cold and refuse to let it die. And that was just the start. The cold had become a constant enemy. Every breath Mira took was sharp and painful, the icy air cutting deep into her lungs. Snowflakes fell softly, yet the wind carried them like sharp needles stinging exposed skin. But Mira pressed on, the fragile bundle of life close to her heart. The baby Solon was sleeping again. Her chest rose and fell slowly, but Mira knew she needed more than just warmth to survive. The storm had frozen many things, including hope, but Mira was determined to light a fire in that darkness. She looked around the frozen wasteland. The ground was covered in thick ice, and giant shards of frozen crystal glinted under the dim light. Somewhere beyond the endless snow was the research outpost, her only chance to save Solon. Mira's hands ached from the cold despite her gloves. Her suit's heater had only limited power left. Every step was heavier than the last, but giving up was not an option. At one point she stopped beside a frozen stream. The water beneath the ice was still flowing, alive, hidden beneath the cold crust. Mira took out a small, sharp tool from her pack and chipped at the ice until she had enough water. She heated it with a portable stove, her fingers trembling as she worked quickly. Back in the shelter of a small rock overhang, Mira carefully mixed the water with the nutrient powder she had carried. The formula wasn't perfect for Solon's alien biology, but it was the best chance she could give. She opened the bottle and tried to feed the baby again. Solon's eyes flickered open briefly, a small sound escaping her lips. Mira felt a small spark of relief. "You're stronger than you look," she whispered. "Just hold on." She cradled the baby close, pressing her warmth against her fragile body. The sound of her heartbeat was a soft rhythm that seemed to calm Solon. Mira's mind wandered to the Varellan mother Sira. She had given everything for her child, and now lay far behind in the snow. Mira knew she could not turn back. The future depended on this little life. Hours passed in quiet struggle. The cold crept in everywhere, and Mira's suit warned of falling temperatures. Her fingers were numb, her face ached, but the fire in her heart would not die. Suddenly a noise broke the silence and a low growl from the darkness. Mira's eyes snapped open. The planet Thalasfi was home to strange creatures. Many adapted to the cold. This sound was close. Mira stood slowly, moving, to shield the baby with her body. From the shadows stepped a large animal, covered in thick fur and glowing faintly under the icy light. It was curious, but not immediately hostile. Mira held her breath, remembering stories from Earth about wild animals sensing kindness. Slowly, she extended a hand, showing no threat. The creature sniffed the air and tilted its head. Then, surprisingly, it stepped closer, nudging Mira gently. It was as if the animal understood she was not an enemy. For a moment, Mira allowed herself a small smile. Even in this frozen world, life could find connection. But she did not linger. The outpost was still far, and time was running out. The strange animal followed her for a few steps, then turned back into the shadows. Mira watched it go, feeling a flicker of hope. Maybe she was not alone. That night, Mira found shelter in a shallow cave. She built a small fire with collected wood and dry brush, careful to keep it contained. The flames danced, throwing warm light on the ice walls. The heat warmed her frozen fingers and chest. She wrapped Solon tightly and sang softly, a lullaby from her childhood. The baby's small hands moved, reaching toward the sound. Mira whispered, "You are safe here." The fire was more than warmth. It was a symbol of life, of hope, of a human's promise to protect. As Mira watched the flames, she thought of the many times humanity had faced darkness and cold, on Earth and beyond. They had always found a way to survive, to protect each other. Solon's breathing grew steady. Mira smiled, feeling a quiet victory, but she knew the hardest part was still ahead. The outpost was distant, and the storm could return at any moment. She rested briefly, then packed her small camp. Her muscles ached, but she forced herself to stand. With Solon in her arms and fire in her heart, Mira stepped back into the cold world. Every step was a promise. No matter the cost, no matter the cold, she would not let this child die. The cold was no longer just a threat. It was a constant presence, pressing against Mira's skin and biting at her resolve. Yet she refused to let the frost win. Each breath came sharp and white, puffing into the endless snow-covered world around her. Solon slept quietly, nestled safely against Mira's chest. Her fragile form was still weaker than Mira wished, but she was alive. That was all that mattered. Back, on the orbiting ship, the storm had trapped the crew. Their instruments beeped and blinked as they watched the harsh weather wrap the planet like a frozen shroud. Lieutenant Arlen's voice crackled through the communicator. "Captain Dalton," he said, "we're tracking your position. The storm is growing stronger. We can't send a rescue team yet." Mira's fingers tightened around the communicator. "I know, but I won't leave. Solon needs me." The voice hesitated. "Captain, your life is important too. You have to come back." Mira looked down at the small face resting on her chest. The child stirred, tiny fingers curling. "I'm not leaving her, not now." She turned off the communicator. There was no use arguing. The journey was lonely. Every step was slow, weighted by exhaustion. The endless white stretched on, unbroken by any signs of life except the distant peaks of ice-covered mountains. Mira thought of Sira, the Virellan mother who had given everything for her child. She could still feel her presence like a shadow walking beside them. Sira's quiet strength haunted the cold air, reminding Mira of what was at stake. One evening, as the pale light faded, Mira found a small shelter made of frozen rock. She laid Solon down gently and sat beside her, shivering. The baby's breaths were shallow but steady. Mira's thoughts drifted back to her own family, memories of Earth, of warm days and bright faces. Her younger brother, lost years ago in a faraway war, came to mind. She remembered how she had promised to protect those who could not protect themselves. Now that promise stretched across the stars to this tiny alien child. Tears filled Mira's eyes, but she blinked them away. There was no time to be weak. She had to be strong for Solon. Suddenly, a soft noise caught her attention. A distant howl carried faintly on the cold wind. Mira's heart quickened. The planet was home to strange creatures, some dangerous. She hugged Solon tighter. Then a shadow moved in the distance, small, fast, and cautious. From the snow, a figure emerged. It was a Thalassian scout, one of the native species of the planet. Their skin shimmered like glass, and their eyes glowed softly in the dim light. The scout raised a hand in greeting. "You should not be here alone," the voice said, calm and steady. Mira nodded, careful to keep Solon covered. "I'm trying to reach the outpost. My child needs help." The scout's eyes softened. "I will guide you." Relief washed over Mira. After days of walking alone in the frozen silence, she had found a friend. Together they moved cautiously through the cold wilderness. The scout's knowledge of the land helped them avoid hidden dangers. Deep crevices covered by snow, thin ice over frozen lakes. At night, Mira watched as the scout used strange tools to build warm shelters. The cold seemed less cruel in their presence. Slowly, Solon's strength grew. The baby's eyes opened wider and her tiny hands reached out more often. Mira's heart swelled with hope. But the journey was far from over. One night, Mira awoke to a terrible sound, the wind roaring louder than ever before. The storm was returning. The shelter shook violently. Snow poured in through cracks, covering the ground like a thick blanket. The scout spoke urgently. "We must move. Now." Mira wrapped Solon close and followed. The storm chased them, freezing the air and blinding their eyes. Steps became harder. The cold burned through their clothes. Mira felt her fingers go numb. Her legs ached, but she kept moving. In the darkness, she thought of the Virelin mother again. Her quiet sacrifice, her final words. "I will not let her die," Mira whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Finally, after what felt like hours, the storm lessened. They reached a high ridge overlooking a valley. In the distance, a faint glow flickered. The research outpost. Mira's breath caught in her throat. She had made it. The scout smiled softly. "You are strong, human. You have fought well." Mira smiled back, tears freezing on her cheeks. This is just the beginning. She tightened her hold on Solon and prepared for the last steps toward safety, knowing that every challenge had brought them closer to hope. The faint glow of the research outpost flickered like a small star on the horizon. Mira's tired legs ached, but she did not stop. The cold wind bit at her face, yet she pressed forward, carrying the tiny life she had sworn to protect. Solon was quiet in her arms, her delicate body still too weak to cry or move much. Mira wrapped her in layers of cloth and her own jacket, shielding the child from the harsh world. Around them, the snow stretched endlessly, white and cold. There was no path, no sign of other travelers, only the harsh silence of a planet gripped by winter. Mira's breath came in short clouds. She could feel the weight of exhaustion pressing down, but she held on to hope like a lifeline. Every step was a promise, to Solon, to the mother she had lost, and to herself. "Just a little farther," Mira whispered, her voice soft but firm. The rocky ground beneath the snow was uneven and treacherous. At times Mira stumbled, her boots slipping on hidden ice, but she caught herself each time, refusing to fall. Hours passed. The sun, hidden behind thick clouds, cast a dim, cold light. Mira's body was growing colder despite her layers. Her hands trembled, and her face was pale, but she would not stop. Solon stirred suddenly, opening her eyes for a brief moment. Mira smiled through her exhaustion. "You're going to be okay," she said. "I won't let anything happen to you." The baby's fingers curled weakly around Mira's jacket. Mira's thoughts drifted back to Earth, her homeworld, where warmth and life were plentiful. Here, on Thalas V, survival was a battle against the cold and time itself. But humans were survivors. They adapted, they fought, and Mira was no different. As night fell, the temperature dropped further. Mira found a small ridge to rest on, carefully laying Solon down on a bed of blankets. She pulled out a small thermal heater from her pack, the soft hum filling the quiet night. The heater's warmth filled the little space, and Mira wrapped herself around Solon, sharing her body heat. She closed her eyes for a moment, but stayed alert. The storm might return at any time. Suddenly, a soft noise broke the silence, a faint rustling nearby. Mira's eyes snapped open. She grabbed a small flashlight and scanned the area. From the shadows emerged a figure, a fellow human. "Captain Dalton?" the voice whispered. Mira's heart leaped. It was Lieutenant Arlen and a small rescue team. They had braved the storm to find her. "We've been searching for you," Arlen said, eyes filled with relief. "We thought we lost you." Mira smiled weakly. "I'm still here, and so is she." She lifted Solon gently, showing the baby, to the team. The medics quickly took over, checking Solon's vital signs and warming her with advanced equipment. Mira watched as Solon's color improved, her breathing steadied. Tears welled up in Mira's eyes. After all the hardship, Solon was safe. The rescue team prepared to bring them back to the outpost for full treatment. Mira felt a mix of relief and sadness. The journey had been long and hard, but her promise had been kept. As the team lifted her onto a hover stretcher, Mira looked back once more at the frozen landscape. This planet may be cold, she thought, but hope can burn brighter than any storm. The research outpost was a small cluster of buildings glowing softly against the frozen landscape. Its walls were thick and reinforced to hold warmth inside, a sanctuary amid the endless cold of Thalasvi. Mira's rescuers carried her and the tiny Solon through the heavy metal doors. Inside, the air was warm and smelled faintly of clean machines and medicine. The hum of life support systems filled the room, a quiet contrast to the harsh silence outside. Medics rushed to Solon's side, carefully unwrapping her from the layers of cloth and warming blankets. They used special machines designed to monitor and support alien life forms. But the infant's body was so delicate, every movement had to be gentle. Mira watched quietly, holding back exhaustion. She knew this was only the beginning. The medics were Thalassians, a native species of the planet. Their skin shimmered like smooth crystal and their eyes glowed softly in the dim light. They were cautious as they examined Solon and Mira, unsure at first what to make of the human who had braved the storm for an alien child. One of the medics, a Thalassian named Aaron, stepped forward. "You carried her across the frozen wastes," Aaron said slowly, his voice soft but filled with respect. "Why?" Mira looked at him, tired but steady. "Because she is alive. She deserves a chance." Aaron studied her for a moment. Then he nodded. "You have the heart of a true guardian." As the days passed, Solon's condition slowly improved. The medics worked tirelessly, blending advanced technology with careful care. Mira stayed by the infant's side, singing lullabies softly and whispering promises of safety. During this time, Mira met the outpost's leader, Commander Vela. She was a strong woman, her eyes sharp but kind. Vela was impressed by Mira's courage and determination. "You risked everything to save this child," Vela said one day. "Not many would do what you did," Mira smiled faintly. "I could not leave her to die." The story of Mira and Solon began to spread through the outpost. Crew members whispered in the hallways about the human who had crossed a frozen deathland for a fragile life. It was a tale of hope that lifted spirits in a harsh place. Outside, the outpost, the storm had finally passed. The cold remained, but it was less fierce. The planet was beginning to breathe again. Mira found herself thinking about home, the blue and green world she had left behind, so far away. But here, on this distant world, she had found something new. Purpose. Solon opened her eyes for the first time in days. They were wide and bright, full of life. Mira reached out, and the infant's small hand grasped her finger. A wave of warmth spread through Mira's heart. The medics shared hopeful news. Solon's body was strong enough to begin feeding on specially prepared nutrients. Slowly she would grow, but there was more to come. Commander Vela invited Mira to a meeting with the leaders of other species present on Thalasvi. Humans, Thalassians, and others gathered to discuss cooperation and shared futures. Mira stood before them and spoke simply but with passion. "We live in a galaxy full of dangers and cold places," she said, "but we also have strength and kindness. One life saved is a promise for many more." Her words echoed in the room. For a moment, the barriers between species seemed smaller. Solon, the fragile child from a frozen wasteland, had become a symbol, a living reminder that hope could survive even in the harshest conditions. Mira looked down at Solon, now resting peacefully. In that small body was the future of many worlds. And as the fires of friendship and courage burned in the outpost, one truth became clear. Humanity's greatest strength was not in weapons or technology, but in the heart to hold life, no matter where it was found. Months had passed since Mira first found Solon in the frozen wasteland. The storm that once seemed endless had given way to gentle snows and pale sunlight. Life was returning to Thalasvi, and so was hope. Inside the outpost, Solon grew stronger every day. Her skin, once almost transparent, now held a soft glow. She smiled, reaching out with curious eyes that seemed to hold the light of stars. Mira never left her side. Though her hands were scarred and her body weakened by the cold, Mira felt a quiet pride. She had kept her promise, no matter the cost. The people of Thalaspha began to change their view of humans. Stories of Mira's courage spread beyond the outpost to nearby settlements and far-off space stations. The human who risked everything for a fragile alien child became a symbol, a beacon of compassion and strength. One morning, Mira stood outside the outpost looking at the frozen horizon. Beside her, Sullen took her first unsteady steps, her small arms reaching out to Mira's hands. "Look at you," Mira said softly, smiling. "Strong and brave." Sullen giggled, the sound light and joyful. Mira felt tears prick at her eyes, tears of happiness and hope. A group of Thalassians approached, led by Commander Vela. They carried a large canvas covered in white cloth. With gentle hands they pulled it away, revealing a mural painted on the outpost wall. The image showed a human woman kneeling in the snow holding a tiny child wrapped in cloth. Behind them, swirling storms faded into bright skies. Commander Vela spoke. "This is a gift, a reminder of what we have seen. Humanity's courage, its will to protect life beyond its own." Mira stepped closer, studying the painting. She saw the strength in the human figure's eyes, the tenderness in the way she held the child. "It is more than a gift," Mira said. "It is a promise." That promise was not forgotten. As the outpost grew stronger, humans and aliens worked side by side, building new homes and sharing knowledge. Old fears gave way to understanding. New friendships were born. Sullen became a living bridge between worlds. She learned both her mother's language and the languages of her new family. She played with children of many species, her laughter echoing through the halls. Mira taught her about Earth, the blue planet of warmth and life far away. She told stories of stars and oceans, of people who dared to dream. Sullen listened, wide-eyed, her small hands tracing the stars on the outpost ceiling. Years later, Mira watched Sullen step forward to speak at a gathering. The child who had once been so fragile now stood tall, her voice clear and strong. "Together," Sullen said, "we can build a future where all life is valued, no matter where it comes from." The crowd erupted in cheers. Mira felt her heart swell. She had held a child in the cold and refused to let her die. That act had changed everything. The galaxy would remember. In the frozen lands of Thalasphi, where death once whispered in the wind, life had blossomed. And at the center of it all was humanity. Its strength not in power, but in love.